Let's talk about lines in a polygon. This is the first problem you have. So if you look at the pattern, if you have a single dot, you have 0 lines. So lines, dots. If you have 2 dots, you can connect it by 1 line. That gives you 1 line. If you have 3 dots, you have 3 lines, and so on. If you have 4, you can simply connect it like a rectangle and then can draw the diagonals, and that makes it 4, 5, 6 lines. And if you have 5, it will be 10. If you have 6, that'll be 15, and so on. So our point of wondering is what is going to happen if there are innumerable, infinite number of lines, which for some of the students is almost impossible to imagine. This is called abstraction. You love to draw abstract pictures, which, well, if you want to draw a human being with different kind of notion, you can represent that by a triangle, you can represent by a circle. So that is what your imaginary mind is extending it. So you can do it with the numbering system. So these are all numbers, and then it goes into the world of letters. We call it variables, which is not a big deal, but it takes a bit of time to understand it. So what is going to happen if we have x number of dots? Some of the people might call it n number of dots. Let's call it x number of dots, right? Now let's look at the pattern. To understand this sort of problem, my advice would be always draw the table. I have been marking one of the students' work who has simply written how many lines are connected with the 10 points, 45. Most likely that's the right answer. Who cares? I don't care about the right answer. How you approached the problem, and that's exactly what I mean. You got to draw the table first. So we have the data. These are the data. We analyze the data. This is where I am analyzing the data. This is where I am analyzing the data. And then I made into a table. So please, 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 always follow this order. From the data, get into the table. Data to table. And the table, you got to think about these two variables. So for 1 dot 0, we agreed on 2 dots 1, 3 dots 3, 4 dots 6, 5 dots 10, 6 dots 15, and so on. And our overall final, we call it a generalization, will be what is going to happen if it is x number of dots. What will be the rule? Why do we need it? Because if we can have this rule, it acts like a tool, a machine, which is going to sort of give me answer, universal answer to everything, all the numbers, all well, fathomable imaginable numbers, infinite numbers. That is what generalization is. It's a very powerful tool. So if you look at this pattern, probably most of the people will be able to write down that pattern. It goes up 0, 1, 3, 6, 10, 5. There is one of the ways to look at the common differences, which is 1 minus 0 is 1, 3 minus 1 is 2, 6 minus 3 is 3, which is quite difficult for the young students to understand. I am showing you another method. Look at this. If I multiply the number of dots by 0, that gives you, and then, well, that will give you 0, but that is not well, conclusive. Look at this second one, which is far better. 2 times 1, that means number of dots, which is 2, 1 less than the dot, that means 2 minus 1 is 1. So if I sort of think about number of dots and times it by 1 less the total number of dots, which is 2 minus 1 for this one, which gives you 1. And if I divide it by 2, that gives you that answer. If I go 3, 1 less than that many number of dots, that gives you 6. If I divide it by, if I halve it, that gives you that number. And so on. 4 is the number of dots. 1 less than the number of dots, which is 4 minus 1 is 3. Divided by 2, that gives you that number. And the next one, now you can easily imagine, is going to be 5 times 1 less than 5. So 5 minus 1 is 4, and then that gives you 20. Divide that by half it, that gives you 10. Now you can look at the pattern. This is x, so x timesing it by x minus 1. This is how you write it. That's the group. You can't simply write x times x minus 1. This is not right. You got to multiply this whole thing by x. So x times open bracket x minus 1 and divided by 2. So the rule is, we call it y, that's the final answer, equals x times it by x minus 1 over 2. That's another way of writing it. Just note, I missed out. I simply didn't bother to write that multiplication sign, which is common with algebra. There is a reason for it, because see, x and that multiplication sign, they look alike. So that's one of the reasons to avoid it. So the final answer, y equals x times x minus 1. Divide the whole thing by 2. That's probably one of the easiest way of dealing with it. I'll stop there.